Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning. It is a wet Tuesday morning.
I know, and as I was saying, we're looking at our studio still standing after that breeze.
I know. Yeah, it's a tricky Tuesday. That's what I'm going to call it, because you step outside, it seems like the rain has stopped, and then feels like hurricane force winds that steps in shortly after.
Yeah, I know, and I don't, it's like I don't know what to do. What do you need to leave with your house with? Do you need an umbrella? Do you need raincoat? Do you need boots? All kind of things. You can't predict the weather.
No,
for the past, week or so.
And there goes the saying, as unpredictable as the weather.
Yep.
But we will tell you at the very least what the forecast is for today. And the forecast, as prepared by Angelia Guy, goes as follows. So the general situation is for a moderate east-northeasterly airflow to prevail over the area. While the 24-hour forecast?
We are going to be looking for some cloudy spells today and some partly cloudy skies tonight. There's going to be also a few showers and some possible isolated thunderstorms. And those are going to continue over most areas this morning. And then they're going to be becoming isolated by this afternoon and tonight.
That's right. And our winds are going to be moving from the east to northeast at 10 to 20 knots, and that makes for a moderate to rough sea. There's also a small craft caution that is in effect occasionally for the occasionally rough seas. Or high temperatures?
Yeah. For today, over the coast, our highs are going to be 84, inland 82 degrees, and over the hills, it's still going to be kind of cool with 78. And the lows, we're looking at 76 degrees on the coast, 70 degrees inland, and over the hills, it's going to be pretty nice and chilly with 64 degrees tonight.
Meanwhile, for the extended forecast for Wednesday and Wednesday night, it's for partly cloudy skies with isolated showers during the day and some cloudy spells along with a few showers and possible isolated thunderstorms developing during the night.
So yeah, looks like it's going to be continuing with these moist conditions.
This little schizophrenic weather taking place.
Keep your umbrellas handy.
Yeah. I would say so. You may think that you're safe and then you attempt to leave and it's just pouring. All right, so that's our weather update for today. Once again, we want to say thank you to the Met Service for providing that update. And we're going to keep things moving now with a bit of motivation for this morning. And our motivation is taken from dailyom.com. So our eye opener goes like this. The longer we are able to hold a positive thought, the stronger that energy around us becomes. If we make no effort at all, our thoughts usually scatter in a vast array of directions. They start and stop and move in surprising ways from one second to the next. If we try to follow our thoughts without controlling them, we will be amazed at how truly inconsistent they are. Yet, if we apply our minds to a specific task, especially one that interests us, they gather together and allow us to focus our attention, creating great power and energy. This is what is known as pure thought, because it is undistracted. The law of attraction, like attracts like, influences all energy, including our thoughts. And this is what makes pure thought so potent. Our undistracted thoughts create a powerful magnet that draws similar energy into our vibrational field. We don't need to focus on action and controlling so much when we're surrounded by energy that draws what we want towards us. We can simply respond to the opportunities that naturally come our way. When this is the essence of our experience, we can go with the flow, knowing that we will be okay. When we hold a thought in our mind without being distracted, we have achieved pure thought. When we have a positive emotional response to that, we enable it to dance and move and breathe itself into existence.
Pretty powerful. Do
Yeah.
you believe in the law of attraction?
I do. I actually do. Of course, when it's convenient.
Of course, right?
Always a bit selective sometimes. Yeah, you know, this reminds me a lot of some of the foundations for meditation. Anytime we talk about mindfulness or meditation. And what I think is what really stood out to me the most was looking at the beginning part of the eye opener, where it reminds us that we are normal. And that we're not the only ones that tend to have scattered thoughts sometimes. That we're not the only ones that have limited focus when we're particularly distracted by many things. And I think that was a comfort in itself, you know, hearing someone else say it or reading it shows that it's something that we all experience. But it does give some tips on how to be able to kind of get that focus back while acknowledging that you're going to have other thoughts as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something, you know, on a personal note, that I go through all the time. I mean, I'm very scatterbrained at times, thinking about a million different things at once, or just, you know, finding it hard to focus on one thing for, you know, an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that helps me at least is writing stuff down.
Yeah.
Making lists. I'm very big on that. So that, you know, no matter what distractions I do get, I can always refer to something so I can bring my mind back to center or something, or at least prioritize, right?
Yeah.
Because there are going to be those times where you're busy or where, you know, stuff just happens all at once.
Yeah, a phone call comes in, someone stops by our office, you get another directive to do something in your office. You said something and I thought that was interesting, scatterbrained, which is usually not something complimentary when someone says you are. No, but what it shows me is that, you know, we look down on something that essentially everyone experiences and that is very common to who we are. As human beings, you're never really just thinking about one thing. You're always, and it goes to your responsibilities, to your future, to your past, to your, you know, what you have to do today, what you didn't accomplish yesterday, whatever it is. There's so many different things going on.
And then especially when you do have those goals or things that you want to do, and then because, you know, you feel distracted or that because so many different things are in the way, you can get even discouraged sometimes and you get frustrated. But I think that one, you know, going back to what I said about prioritizing and also, you know, trying to remember the reasons why you want to do certain things can be very helpful, especially in those moments when you do, you know, sometimes get off track. If you keep that in mind, you know, it makes it easier to focus, and it also makes it easier to adapt, because there are times when you do have to change, right? Very rarely does like the course that we have mapped out for what we want to do pan out exactly how.
Oh, if only, huh?
So yeah, that's why mindfulness is so important, because it may be one specific thing you want to accomplish, but you know, I can't think of a specific example, but you know, you may end up where you want to be, or in a different place that could be even better based on all of the things that going on. If you take that time to center yourself, focus, think about where you are, where you want to be, and you can definitely accomplish whatever it is that you want.
Which is why I've always subscribed to the fact that being a multitasker is kind of the anomaly. Because naturally, we only focus on one thing at a time. Like you literally can't be doing 5 things at the same time and really giving all of them focus. You're just kind of partially doing it. And so I think that that's such an important thing. You can be working on multiple things in a day, multiple things in an hour, but you have to give each one your dedicated focus at that time, because you really never make any progress if you're just giving pieces of yourself all around to the different things that you have to get done or the different thoughts that you're focused on. So if this is you, if this is something you struggle with, take a deep breath and realize you are completely normal. And all you have to do is develop the tips on how you can be able to focus on what needs to get done first, on what needs your entire energy, and start there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then also don't forget to take stock of your accomplishments.
Yeah.
Step back, and then, in those moments where you do lose focus or you do feel frustrated, say, hey, well, I've done this so far, so therefore I can continue doing what I want to as well.
Yeah. All right, so that is our eye opener for today. And Gavin, I know you've been keeping up with all that's been happening, and the conversation this morning, I imagine, is still focusing on the tragedy that took place on Friday. And our morning tea this morning really kind of hones in on that.
Yeah. So yeah, our morning tea discussion this morning is the concept of the village raising the child still relevant in this generation nowadays? And I think that's really a multifaceted question. And it's strange for me because I don't have kids. And so when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about it obviously from like the outside looking in, and also looking back on my own childhood and children that I know and have been sort of watching growing up.
Yeah.
I think the concept is still relevant, but I think nowadays or at least one of the things that is at the forefront of all of our minds nowadays is, the risk of abuse and the risk of exposing your children to so and so. Because, we often hear, when we talk about the village raising the child and something, people would say, well, back in the old days, it was everybody in the community was just,
could discipline your child.
And then exactly, or could, be around them or whatever. And the thing was the children would never talk back to adults and never do anything.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, but the downside to that was, there was a lot of abuse that could have occurred. It was hidden. Children were not necessarily taught to speak up, to protect themselves, things like that. So I think that the concept is still relevant, but I think now that we are more conscious of what the dangers are, or maybe not say more conscious of, at least more open about discussing.
Yeah.
I think the fear is, I guess, do you let the village raise a child, or do you just keep them closed up behind, closed doors until they're 18 and be one of the super protective, hovering parents? I don't know. But I think the concept is irrelevant because, there's nothing, children, two parents can't teach a child everything that it needs to know.
Yeah.
There has to be a degree of exposure to, experience-wise, just from a social point of view as well, how children can operate within society, socialize with other people. They need to learn that from interacting with others as well. So I think it is very important. I don't know, what's your take?
I think you said something critical, and I think that's one of the aspects I've never thought of. And just looking at how society progresses, and technology and information, and they both help each other. There's a lot more information. Technology has made that information more accessible to people, and so we know and understand a lot more about how children develop and what's important to them and what's not good for them. And so I think individually, parents are perhaps shaping their own parenting style that may be very different from their parents, and by extension, other adults in community. And I think somewhere along the line, that probably led to the idea that people think that the village isn't involved. But I think when we put this in focus, and especially with what's happening right now, you don't necessarily have to be the person that parents that child. If it's your neighbor's child, for example, you don't have to be stepping on the toes of the role of the parent. But the village is still important when it comes to protecting that child. And so if you see something, or you hear something, or you suspect something, you have a role there. And I think that's really where, even if you move away from the concept of a village, just community-minded people, we can't just see things happen and say nothing, because we are essentially carrying a part of that burden of guilt
Yeah.
in not being able to do something about it. Children are vulnerable populations because they don't have sometimes the know-how, they don't have the access to be able to get help for themselves. And so that's why adults and others in society have a role to play in helping to give them that safe environment. So, you know, like I said, you don't want to step on the toes of the parents, but if you see something that warrants, you see that red flag, you know, you do your part. And that's where the village still has a very critical role in being a part of raising and protecting children.
No, I absolutely agree. I think that's probably when people refer to the village raising the child, that's probably what they're talking about.
Yeah.
More this sort of protective, sort of nurturing environment.
Yeah.
So I think that that's definitely the maybe the biggest function of, you know, the wider community in relation to, you know, a child, you know, in that context. And I think that perhaps it just changes with time. Things, you know, things do change, because I find that the concept still does sort of play out, but just in different ways. It's interesting that you talked about technology, because, you know, I know nowadays one of the big things is that, you know, we have all these online, you know, let's say groups and support groups and parenting things and mommy this and, you know, so where people can actually form different types of communities that perhaps didn't exist 50 years ago. But at the end of the day, they might be achieving something similar, if not the same. So that can be particularly helpful when it comes to, you know, I'm going through this problem with my child, or I've observed this. What should I do, or how does somebody else deal with it? So the support for parents and for children, I think, can still manifest in several different ways. Probably just not the same way that we think about it traditionally.
And you know, I think we still see elements of it, because we do see people a lot of times stepping up and providing for children within the communities or in you know, larger towns or larger cities. So it does show that care and that involvement is still there.
Yeah.
So it's not that we've completely lost it. I think we just have to accept the new role. You know.
And I think that we're also like starting to be more proactive in terms of, you know, getting the different aspects of the community involved, particularly schools, in terms of taking on a little bit more of that protection, you know, in terms of like, you know, the whole reporting requirements if you're observing something that doesn't look right. Now we are, you know, we're getting more proactive in terms of schools and authorities, and they're getting more hands-on when, you know, a lot used to stay behind closed doors, or things used to be very contained within a, you know, let's say a neighborhood or community or something. Maybe that's the way that people would have tried to build with in the past. But now we're looking at it through a bigger, you know, let's say social lens, I guess. So I think different aspects of it do still appear today. So the concept is relevant.
So what are your thoughts? Of course, our morning tea is a part of stirring up conversation. Start at home. Talk about with your spouse, with your whoever's in the house with you, when you go to work, and start to have some meaningful conversations. Of course, you can always share your thoughts with us on our Facebook page and or Instagram. But we have an extended conversation lined up for this morning, and we are hoping that we can do our part in terms of being able to look at the tragedy that took place on Friday and equip us with tools and information that helps us to process and also helps us to figure out how we can be more proactive in future instances where we don't have to have reports like this. So our first conversation is going to be looking specifically at, I think, the Families and Children's Act, looking at the legal protection that exists for children. And then the second part, we also include a mental health therapist. Of course, Jenny's going to be here. She's going to talk a bit about the abuse cycle once again, but also other things that we know children are vulnerable to as well.
And then for our final segment, we are going to be taking it from the mental to a bit of the physical side, and how we can look out for physical well-being, and we are going to get some basics on CPR. So that's going to be super useful as well.
All right, so that's our lineup for this morning. We're going to go ahead and take a break. But before we do, we got our birthday shout out.
And we do want to wish a very, very happy birthday from all of us here at Open Your Eyes and Channel 5 to Lucille Rekenya. So happy birthday, Lucille, from all of us here at Open Your Eyes.
You said that's her name, and I thought you could sing the song,
No.
right? Yeah. All right, but that's it for us. We're going to take that break. When we come back, we'll get our conversation started. So please stay tuned.
With over 100 years
we're back and we're starting our first conversation this morning looking at some of the laws that do exist in terms of protecting our children in Belize. And of course, this is all a part of a wider conversation in being able to help us all process through the trauma that we feel from hearing or seeing the stories about the recent tragedy. And we have this on set, Fermin Oliveira. Fermin is a social work lecturer. He, at one time, was the executive director for the community rehabilitation. Director, for the community rehabilitation department, and he also does some research on some of the social issues that we see in Belize. Good morning, Fermin.
Good morning, Marlene, Gavin. It's good to be here.
And thank you for coming in and helping us to process, because that's ideally what we want to do. I want to start off by just asking your initial thoughts on what we know so far about the incident that took place on Friday.
Yeah. Well, one was kind of like disbelief. You know, I tend to not be connected on social media otherwise during the weekend, but the story was overwhelming that by word of mouth they say, have you heard? And then when we look into the matter, and it was sad, to be honest with you, devastating how children can be subjected to this type of cruelty. And it's not anything necessarily new that that completely overwhelmed me. I think the shock was really how did we, and I say collective we as a society, allow this to go that far. That was what was devastating, I think.
From a community perspective, I see how that's your first thought, and I think because you are community oriented, but for I think the wider public, that's not usually the first thought we have. What did we do? It's a blame game. It's what did she do? What did he do? What did they do? Or what they didn't do?
Right. Marlene, I have this colleague, and I respect her very, very much, and she would say something like, you know, when we can't solve the big things, we scramble to try to address the little things, and blaming is usually often one of those little things contextually, because we are confused, we are overwhelmed, we want to blame, and usually we want to blame the mother or some woman. You know, it's always the woman's fault, you know, even the fall of man, so to speak. And of course, I'm joking. But this is not a joke. We want to blame. And you know, maybe there is some room for that. But I think the wider discussion needs to be focused around how do we prevent these things from happening? How did it slip through the cracks throughout? Let me just tell you my experience with working with children in conflict with the law. I would see them at that point when they have committed offenses. But as a very young, untrained, just a regular person trying to do good, I recognize one thing that was common in the stories is young children, boys and girls, a history of neglect and abuse that was unchecked, for the most part. And then they would come into care when they had committed offenses. But the history was abuse and neglect in their lives. So it was a concern. Wayback has always been, you know, one of those things that I think about. And systems fail. And when I say systems fail, I'm not just talking about the formal, the response system, but society, the communities, the neighborhoods. And of course there are explanations to these things, but nonetheless the end result is tragic for the victims. You know.
You know, and of course, going back to what you were talking about community, I think naturally, especially if you are in a community that where something like this has happened, one of the first things that naturally comes to mind is, what could I have done? Or did I miss signs? Did I do something? So in terms of where do we begin, I guess, when we're talking about looking out for a child in our, who may be related to us or just in our community?
Well, outside of the legal stuff, which I think we can touch a little bit later, but what can we do? Let me tell you what the data shows, the research that I've read as it relates to reporting these type of things. And some of the data that I was really keen about was among social workers who in many jurisdictions have a legal obligation meaning they must report. There was a clear hesitation among practicing social workers to report incidents of child sexual abuse specifically. We can talk about that a little bit later on, but I just want to tell you that even those who are trained and know that they should report, there is a serious hesitation.
But what would be the cause of that hesitation? Social work in theory and in training it's based on being able to assist in the protection of children.
Right. So before I answer the why we believe and why the explanations that are out there, I want to point out that there is a real hesitation among people to report these things.
Yes.
And in an extreme case, even among social workers. Specifically as it relates to child sexual abuse. The data is telling us that given the esteem of the perpetrator, if the person is a teacher, a principal, a pastor, or a minister, some affluent person, that hesitation increases. So we start to doubt our best guess in disbelief that some people that we hold in high esteem are in fact capable and are committing these offenses. So that's high on the radar here. Who you are may influence my belief as to have you done this or not. So that is one of those things. Then there is the retribution impact. The idea that people in high places, high powerful, wealthy people can come after me to discredit me as being the one that should champion, as the one championing the cause for this. So those are two, the person, the affluence of the person, fear of retribution by the powers that be. Sometimes, let us make no mistakes, in these kinds of situations, forces are actively attempting to sabotage, to discredit our children. Many times, some of these things go addressed in a very corrupt way of intimidation and paying our victims and their parents.
And I think if we could just perhaps put this in on the list of things that we want to get to, we can also talk about the court system, because that makes it harder, because the child at whatever age also has the burden of being able to provide that proof, in addition to social workers and medical care system. But going back to it, because you said that the hesitation is in reporting sexual abuse. What I'm interested in is even in physical abuse, because I hear stories all the time. Oh, well, my neighbor like whop up it pick me. And I would ask, did you report it? And many times, in fact, all cases, I've heard no, because there's I don't want to get involved in that. Some people still beat, I may not, but they still do it.
Right.
And the issue really is that there may be that one time that it goes too far.
Well, Marlene, the truth is that the cultural context, and let us make no mistake, we live in a very violent, punitive, a hurtful society, and we inflict the most vulnerable with a certain measure of punishment and so on. They say if lashing kids and really abusing kids. I am not talking about the need to discipline children. I understand that. I raised 3 kids of my own. All my life I've worked with kids. I recognize the importance of disciplining. That's not the same as abuse. We need to be crystal clear about those things, about that difference. But if the abuse is pervasive, meaning if it's rampant in our society, we tend to start to normalize that behavior. Maybe we have a culture of abusing our kids. Then it's normal. We don't see it as anything. We say, well, that's a parent's right to lash, and we might call it disciplining their children, when in fact what we're doing is abuse. So the cultural context is important. If we have seen, if we have suffered, if we have experienced, then it might just become normal that we accept and condone this behavior. I recall when there was a move to remove corporal punishment, and I don't know if you remember, might have been too young to, that uphill battle. Yeah. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. And when it was taken out of schools, in fact, the appeasement was that only the principal would have could be able to beat.
And we, you know what, our children in need of disciplining, well, that's has always been a big, raising children is a difficult job. I must say it's a difficult job. So why do neighbors and people don't report? One, it's a hands-off, could be, maybe they don't want to seem to be interfering in, the business of other people. Maybe it's culturally accepted. Maybe we think that it is okay. And yes, abuse and neglect, for anybody that's hearing me, will really hurt that child more than help that child.
Let me delve just a bit there, because there's also an underlying fear, and we hear it all the time. I hear it from the younger people now, me no want to be a snitch. And it also is, the adults don't use the same language, but there is a fear of being a whistleblower, of being someone who stands up for, based on our knowledge and our perspectives, what is right. So if I know that the sound of that child being beaten just sounds excessive, like that's not a clap, and it's not, and I don't condone either, but you could hear that the child is in pain, and I don't report it. A part of it sometimes is, well, I don't want the neighbor know that it's in business,
Right.
and then they know that I do that. So we stop ourselves from being the person who would, like we would hope somebody else would.
Right.
But I don't want to do it.
Well, let me just tell you all and the public that there is protection. Legal, I mean, the paper, the law provides protection for people that do report. Where, let us say it was a false alarm, or that in good faith and goodwill, nobody will bring charges against you. And really the response system itself, meaning either the social work department or social services or the police, should never divulge or reveal who made that report.
Okay.
So there are those protections, but that maybe isn't sufficient to convince Jan public that maybe if I report, this is confidential. So if that fear is very real, and it does exist, and let me tell you, there is a lot of concern in the integrity of the responding system. In my practice, and I'm very proud of this, as it relates to the persons that I've worked with, I've never known about a case where social workers would reveal. No, I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm just saying that I have never heard where they say, oh, Marlene reported, she's the one.
Yeah.
And I think that's great, and I think that's what we need to be supported and to be proud of, that the confidentiality of the reporter needs to be kept exactly confidential. It's privileged information. So to offer some protection to the person really attempting to protect the victim, in this case, children.
Yeah, well, that kind of preempts what was going to be my next question, which was really what is, for somebody who is in that position, whether it is, could be a social worker or it could just be somebody in the community. Given that, there even people do have these fears of, let's say, retribution or whatever, but what is the best case scenario, you spoke about, the protections that ought to be in place for the person who's reporting, but also for the child. If there is a case of abuse, and I do take it upon myself to call the authorities, what can I hope for? What
You mean you as a reporter?
As a reporter, yeah. How would the child...
Well, you know what, your involvement would kind of end there. Where you report, you suspect this, and then an investigator or somebody who is doing that investigation, that should happen. It's not like you will be dragged to court to give testimony or witnesses or things like that, to be a witness. That would be the extent of your job. I think it's minimal and it's great. So that it gives the persons that are reporting minimal input. Can some of this be done maliciously? Maybe it has, but then again, you will still be protected, because the intent, the thinking is, you know what, you're doing this in good faith, so we won't bring charges against you.
And even if you're wrong,
even if you're wrong,
it's better to be wrong than to know you're right and not have done anything.
Well, Marlene, when it comes to children or vulnerable populations, which is always a concern for us, children are there. It's better to, somebody would say, to err on the side of caution than to just allow that to happen. So, but that is one of those things, that why aren't we catching some of these things? And you know what? Go ahead, Marlene.
No, because I wanted to follow, I think Gavin really do something important in terms of what it feels like to be the reporter in terms of reporting abuse. So you make the call, you finally decide, and you can actually do it to Crime Stoppers too with their app. Like you can
That's
send
right.
tips anonymously there. And so I send this tip. Maybe I even see there's some investigation going on. But what happens is we don't understand the process as people who are not involved. So I still see the child there, and that just makes me give up hope. Like they did nothing. I called social, they did nothing.
Well, you know, it's hard to, when you don't know especially what is happening, having experienced that work environment, I must tell you that these people are committed. They do a fairly decent job at responding. Actually, I think the criticism has been all that social does is to move kids, which sometimes it can look that way. But when they move children, I think there is sufficient substance to support that move. It's always a traumatic and hard thing to do, but you're rescuing, you're saving, you're protecting that child. And even when it hurts, that is what needs to happen. So I think there has been a fair level of criticism in that respect. That all they do is to move kids. But my experience has been when they move is to protect children. Protect children takes serious energies and strength, and almost going against the odds. The children you're saving many times and protecting want to be with. So for example, I would tell students, you don't go against your best, just follow the rules.
Yeah.
Report it, take action. The reward might come many years later, if anything. Sometimes you may never see it.
Yeah.
But to protect children takes energy, takes a serious conviction.
It's a tiered approach, though.
It's
in
a
fact,
tiered
the
approach.
first incident wouldn't necessarily lead to the child being removed.
No, the law gives you definition. They're a bit broad, but it's to safeguard. They would say if this child is suffering harm or likely to suffer harm. So it's a I wouldn't say it's a guesstimate, but it's a judgment decision, and that judgment must be taken very seriously, and you will act on that judgment.
Yeah.
But let us be very real. The situation of our children, and I don't want to, maybe what do I see? I see lots of neglect still. I mean, tons of neglect. You see kids wandering late, begging by the stores, and you see neglect. So you get hardened, you get used to this. You think, well, nothing is happening. And you know what? There is an effect. There is an impact. And, we'll be seeing these as time comes along. But our insensitivity to the condition of children can be so low that unless we see that child dying, then, oh my God, maybe we need to do something. And that needs to be reversed.
Wow.
That needs to be reversed. That children need to be protected.
That's a critical statement that you just said, that we are now only reacting at the point of extreme harm or death, rather than some of the basics.
Well, there is a discussion, and this is kind of like on the side of more class time. It's 100 and something days. I often think about this. Do we need more class time? I mean, honestly, I critically think about the realities of what I see working within this primary school system, as an example. Do we need more class time? I'll be honest with you, and I would shoulder that criticism that comes. Children need not necessarily more class time. Children need more opportunities to recreate, to develop their skills in music, in arts, in play, in games, in competition. Forget class time. We do too much of that. And what are the results? We can't show meaningful, tangible improvements. My guess is if you have class in music and the kids are doing more exercise and walking and these kinds of things, we will see way better reaction in early childhood education, including primary school, I'm thinking about, than just having kids completely corralled in these terrible classroom situations where they're overcrowded, where the teachers are burnt out. You know, we don't need more teachers, we need more PE teachers, we need more recreational people. That's really what we need. How you combat trauma and neglect is offering those opportunities in another area for that child to develop. Music, art, painting, sports, recreation, that's where we need to go.
And especially those types of needs, a lot of the time can't be met at home, you know?
You're right. They can't be met at home many times. So we need to rethink. And it's not like, I mean, if with a little research, we would see that, well, Fremont is not talking craziness. But we haven't improved our math scores more. We haven't improved anything. What we have improved is in more violence and more crime. And regardless of, you know, we fighting if one number. So listen, we need to be very clear that we are living in a very violent society. And the young people are delivering it and also receiving it. So something really radical needs to take place. Look at
Has
health.
there been anything radical of recent? This is where I mean, let's be honest, the changing with the corporal punishment within classrooms, that was radical. The adjustments to the criminal code to really strengthen and also clarify and provide for equality.
Absolutely.
Those were also
Good
really
things.
big steps.
Absolutely.
But in terms of looking at what we are doing for children in Belize, in being able to not just ensure that they're vaccinated or definitely enrollment in school is important, but to better their lives, because we know, and we'll probably get by the end of this year, the new poverty indicators, but at one point, a little less than half. I think that we know that some parents are struggling. I mean, single parents are working as hard as they can, sometimes just if they can get childcare access, they do. If not, the oldest child takes care of them. So we know that the situation for many, it's desperate.
It is desperate. You know, it is, like I said, you know, the culture. Of course, there's a culture of poverty. I mean, let me tell you, I come from up north. I come from Corozal, where we take great pride in taking care of our yards, and in the front of our yards, next to the drain, we clean that. People here, their houses in some areas are being covered by it, but they expect maybe city council to do that. The culture. Then you get immersed into another culture, and suddenly your lenses start to change. You start to, you know, you stop seeing the trash that's all around. You don't see the need to have it moved. You know,
because it's not my job.
Well, exactly. So, you know, I don't want to sound cynical about things, but we need to keep check and keep stock. You know, and we get to use the things that are detrimental and that are not progressive, and we accept that as a new reality, including abuse. If a child starts to grow up, he thinks this is right, he thinks this is it, and this is what you dish out. You know, and you know, you can talk to teachers about this, but the climate in a regular classroom, in a regular schools, man, that's serious. You know, that's another conversation.
Even if you talk to teachers about the approach of some parents, I mean, they're constantly under threat as well. But looking at the issue of, because there's shared responsibility here. I guess that's what I wanted to get at. A lot of times we look at a child who perhaps went through something as terrible as what we saw on Friday. But every day, the social workers are inundated with going into homes and seeing terrible conditions, whether it's neglect, whether it's some sort of malnourishment a child may feel. Maybe they're not necessarily encouraged to go to school. There's so many things that are absolutely terrible for children that are experienced every day. But the blame game that happens, it's social work's fault, it's a parent's fault, it's a teacher's fault, it's a school's fault, it's a church's fault, it's a police's fault, and we can't seem to get a sense of what our roles are. And when someone fails, whoever that is, we're just trying to point a finger.
Yeah, you know, to be honest with you, you know, we have evolved into a very individualistic society. We have changed the ways of. It's when I think about it, it's like we are forgetting as society develops of how to be human beings, caring and loving and affectionate. It's about me. It's about very individualistic. It's about materialism. Our society has changed. Make no mistake. You know, one day we will long, you know, right now we have long distance education and we can have classrooms that's one day the premier education will be where there is a lecturer in the classroom, where they know you by name, by a face. It's not a number, it's not just, you know, everything is almost virtual. It's like that human connectiveness is being gradually eroded. You see, that's how I see it. We don't have to be like other societies, I don't think. I think we have a unique history, but our base, what makes us unique, you know, it's caring. That's what, you know, caring for each other. You know, in a very individualistic society, when, you know, you see that person there that was shot or killed, or, well, that's not my child. Yeah. That's somebody else's, as long as they don't come home. You see, in other more progressive societies, that's a crime against all of us. Mm-hmm. And we demand that gets solved, and we demand answers. But we are not there. Our structure of governance is one really that puts us to combat against ourselves, rather than they really being there to develop, to help, to see human development, to see human progress. You know, so there is blame all around. Including the fact that the people that really abuse their kids are those in the home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Make no mistake. Statistically for donkey years, and the primary ones that abuse kids are women. Mm-hmm. That is not to say that women are bad. It's just that 95% of persons providing childcare are women still. Mm-hmm. So they're at the forefront. They're at the of dealing with the stresses and pressures of child rearing, and often in difficult circumstances. So the error or they're overwhelmed, and they do abuse their children.
Abuse in what sense? Because people hear abuse and they think sexual abuse, but that's not the numbers you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. All, you know, except for sexual abuse probably, because we need to be crystal clear that the primary sexual abusers are heterosexual males. And we don't need to.
Can you say that again? You mean men who are not gay?
Straight men, traditionally, statistically, are the overwhelming majority of sexual abusers and those who commit sexual crimes against children and women or girls. You know.
So, with that clarified, when you say that women are the main perpetrator of abuse, what do you mean? Are you talking about neglect?
Physical neglect, those kinds of things, yeah. And remember, this is not to say, oh my God, women are bad or single women. No. It's just that they are in contact with doing that child care, so they naturally, the numbers are overwhelming. Yeah. Right. But it speaks to this point, and that's why I was saying this support that women need. That's where we need to. What is the support? Child care, you know, family planning, you know, education, you know, and I think in some areas they're doing well, but we
giving
must
them jobs,
big time.
Yeah, and this is such a there's an article I read that was exactly this point. If you want to help children, help the parents.
Absolutely, 100%.
If you see a child who's suffering and you don't like the circumstances, help the parents. That's because. Right. The backpack, the meal, all of those are great to help with short-term needs, but the parents need to provide them.
Right.
So we have a lot more to discuss. What we'll actually do is take a very quick pause. We've got to get into some of the laws as well. There are laws that regulate who should be reporting child abuse, who must report child abuse, and the consequences there. But we'll actually pause, and we'll include Jenny Lovell in the conversation to bring in some of the psychological aspects as well. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll be back in a few.
With over 100 years of service.
And we are back, and we are continuing our conversation about child and domestic abuse in the home. We are still with Fermin Oliveira, and we are now joined by Jenny Lovell, who is a mental health advocate and a therapist. Good morning, Jenny, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good morning.
You know, continuing this conversation, perhaps we can start by, just getting some of your initial feedback on the recent tragic events that I'm sure that has been at the forefront of everybody's mind. You come across these types of things in your field of work. So when you heard the news, as everybody else, what were your initial thoughts?
I heard it last night when I looked at the news, and what I saw was rage. When you can beat a child that severely and then use your penis as a weapon, because that's what it was a weapon. And you have men in domestic violence, what they'll do, they'll rape their wives, because it's about the shame, it's about the punishment, the subjugation, the control, the power, and that's what they do. They will use their body organ to punish that woman. So batters a child and then sexually abuses that child. And it's rage. That's it. A pedophile, let me tell you, a pedophile literally will talk about a child like a love object, like an adult. And they'll be very kind and sweet, and because they're grooming that child. This wasn't that. This was rage. And people need to understand that. It's very, very important. See, as parents, men and women, we have to be aware about what's going on in our home and we have to protect our children. I have Fermin saying that it is so critical that we protect these children because they're vulnerable. Yeah. Children also need to feel that emotional support from you. A child needs to know that I can come and tell you anything, and you're not going to beat me, you're not going to call me names, you're not going to curse me, you're not going to choose your man over me, that I have your emotional support. And a lot of times these children don't have that because the woman preferred to give that child to human services rather than let her man go. And I'm saying it out loud because we see this. Am I lying?
No,
we
you're
see this. And I'm always floored when a woman will select a man over her own child. But that baby, and when I say baby, I'm talking up to 13 years old, because pedophiles will go after children. They like prepubescent children, but they will go with children up to 13 years old, right? That child has to feel secure enough to come and tell you, because they draw them in by telling them things or doing them things and then call it our little secret. This is how mommy wants you to love me, and tell the child all kinds of things. And so if you do not have that relationship with a child will not feel safe to come and talk to you. And this is why we have to impress upon parents.
There's so many layers to this one issue, and I don't want to just focus it like this is an isolated case. I guess that's what I am trying.
Right.
Because some of the other issues we know are prevalent. Child abuse, we know exists.
Yeah.
Physical, sexual neglect, we know exists. Domestic abuse, which is a very critical part of the conversation of what we've seen. I mean, clearly when you have both mothers, mother of the perpetrator and mother of the mother talking about, there were signs. We have struggled for so long to be able to kind of get the message out of the implications of domestic violence, and this shows, I think, one of the ones we've been saying for a long time. It's not just your life at risk, it's the children as well. Talk to me about how this, because it still exists. There's a woman at home who probably is a victim of domestic violence who is scared now of thinking what could happen to their children.
There are places you can get help.
Yeah.
But see, a lot of women are so afraid because, unfortunately, in our country, when we offer like shelter, it's not for a long period. So if I'm not working, I go into the shelter for a while, but then what do I do? I don't have a job, I don't have any training. Like, what do I do? I still have these children I have to feed. I still have to feed myself. What do I do? So they go back into that situation even though they don't want to, because the support is not long enough and strong enough to help her and those children. But I will say this, it is critical that you are constantly aware of your vulnerable child who is in that situation with you. You have to be, and if you
Is
have
this common
parents-
that in a domestic violence situation, the child would be a victim as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, remember in the home, in the house context, the energy that is there, the fight, the animosity ripples through. So and you know, maybe the licks aren't coming on the child yet, but that emotional turmoil is just as damaging. I don't know. It's just as
witnessing
damaging,
it,
right?
the trauma of witnessing your mother being beaten,
You know,
that's
so
really traumatic for a child.
there's no escaping that reality. That healthy families will raise healthy kids, and families that are in distress, and so that ripples also as well. And we see the manifestation in the schools, in all these areas, in even our expression of violence. You know, it ripples through. You know, so it's critical. It's dire. You know, we need to really rethink just many things. You know. And I in working with students as a social worker, and we do some interventions in the schools, and I tell them, listen, these 2 hours that you will have with these kids could be the very best 2 hours in their day. Just nail it down, be empathic, be supportive, listen, nurture. That's it. We can't be in the homes with them, maybe we can't, but let us do what we can. And sometimes doing what we can, meaning I will report this, and you leave it there. But everybody needs to be playing a little part, and you know, it's there's a lot, but.
And I also wanted to ask, or delve deeper, I guess, into something that Jenny brought up, and that was actually where can people actually get the help that they need? Whether it's for a woman or a spouse who's in a domestic violence situation, or a child who's witnessed something or has been abused, who is now in need of, let's say, counseling, different, types of therapy to deal with what they've been through, whether physical or mental. What for somebody who is in that situation, what hope, what can they do to...
Women's department is a great place to go. Those ladies are trained, and they will extricate. Okay, get you out of there. Particularly if there are children involved, they will do that. But let me say this. I want to just tell you a quick story. I was working at a school, and this baby used to sit in class, and she just spaced out. Teacher called and said, "This baby is spacing out, and I don't know what's wrong. She's not talking to me." So she came over, and I sat with her, and we were talking, and I said, you stare off into space, and where do you go? She says, "I go back home." She says, "Every day when I come to school, my daddy tells my mommy that he's going to kill her. So I don't know if when I get home, mommy will be alive." Yeah. She's seeing this on a daily basis. That's so traumatic for a child.
Yeah.
All right. She's witnessing this on a daily basis, and people think just because, and he beats her too, by the way, but just because she is in the home and just witnessing that it doesn't affect her, that's trauma. And the long term damage that it does to children, it's incredible.
You know, there was a conversation back in the 90s, and you might remember, big move, big push, empowering women, all kinds of things. And unfortunately, I think that has fallen off the radar. We're right back, to address some of the things. People will tell you, people will combat that argument by saying, we have lots of women in the university, which is true, which is great.
Yeah.
We don't need to be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, and I think you're right, and I believe this. You want to help families and children, help the women in those. I am not saying you disregard men, but we need to be very clear that when men are part of the distress that comes on women and children. Let us be very. They can't escape it because they're so linked economically. They're tied, even sexually. It's a shame that today's day and age, women might think that the only way to enjoy their sexuality is with their partner. And I'm being crude about it, but that is disempowering. I don't care who says what. Women need to be freed from some of these vestiges that keep them subordinate to their male counterparts. Do we need other interventions for men and young boys? And so yes, and I think it holds true. Sports, art, music. We need to develop better culture very early. Expose people to stuff, to nature. You know.
Actually, I'll tell you, I love what Compar is doing, because Compar goes into the homes, and they're going in Southside, they're going in different parts of the country, and they are actually teaching parenting skills.
Yeah.
But part of the teaching the parenting skills, the women, it's mostly women who come to the sessions, and they talk about domestic violence, they talk about bullying, they talk about sexual things that can happen in the home, preparing women. And that's where a lot of times we meet these women who are being abused, and they're ashamed. There's a shame element where people do not want to discuss that I'm being beaten, or I'm in a home where I have no control.
You know, and it speaks to the idea of, how much more people do we need? Where do we plug that investment? You know, we're investing on many things, and on certain things that, it's disputable. But everybody will tell you, if the main actors are not talking about this, then that's their problem. But we need way more mental health professionals. We need way more. We're talking social workers, psychiatrists, Compar. We need a counselor or a social worker in every school at every level. At least one. That's, you're talking about a human capital investment, and they'll tell you, but that's what is necessary right now, and to expose children to educational, other learning things in significant quantities. Every child, I don't want to hear no politician tell me about free education. That's pure to me. I want to hear that every child will get an opportunity to learn to play an instrument. That is what I want to listen to. Some instrument, get a chance to play. Guitar, flute, drums, whatever. Every child needs to. Every child needs.
Can I
Sure,
jump
go
in
ahead.
here? Because I really want to get a point across.
Go ahead.
How can we help women? Because I'll tell you something, Marlene, and a lot of people don't know this. Men target, especially pedophiles. A pedophile is someone who likes prepubescent children, right? He'll see a woman and he sees children that are beautiful, he likes, and he wants those children. He will start courting that woman,
For the children.
For the children. And then get into that home and be this wonderful man to her. So she thinks that she has found Mr. Right. Right? But he is after her children. And I really need women out there to understand. Before you take some man into your home, you absolutely need to know what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with. How can you meet somebody for a week and have them move into your home with you? Or you move into theirs and have young children.
Expose them to your children.
Expose them to your children, because you move in and have your children with them. If you're one of these women, you really and truly need to be paying attention. You've got to ask your children. I hate to tell you another story real quick.
Well, I'm not good at hearing the stories. That was a really hard one just now.
I know, and Marlene,
and it's true.
I hear this all the time, okay?
It hurts because it's true, and because I've heard other stories similar to that. Children are really suffering.
Really suffering in this
Before you go
country.
to your story, though, just because I don't want to lose the opportunity, what I wanted to bring into the discussion is looking at how violence is normalized in a society, And in a society like Belize, I don't want to mince words. We need to look in the mirror. We are a violent society.
Particularly for men.
Yeah.
You know?
And regardless of what the police or anybody wants to say, you can't tell me 5 less murders, 6 less murders. It makes no difference. We are a violent community.
Too violent.
And it is normalized in communities, and it is normalized in families. It is normalized in the way we speak to each other. And it is normalized in relationships. We are here. This is what we see. This is what we report on a daily basis. How does a society, I mean, we can't reverse. And this is a manifestation of years of things, many things, poverty and many things.
Decades.
We go back and blame. But what do we do at this point? What can we do at this point to either stop it from progressing, if at the very least that's what we can do, or start the healing, or start to make a shift? What needs to be done?
Well, I'm sure we'll have different ideas. But
All right, so let's start with you,
Let me, you say, once you learn, I mean, how do you change? And I am a stickler to, you know, if this is what I'm exposed to, this is what I was used to me, exposure to something different is what can create that space. If I am used to living in filth and somehow I get some exposure to a clean park, to a golf course, then you have perspective. That's why I was thinking, you know, it's hard to change older person and so on. But there are opportunities to invest early. And I think education. I am not talking about more math class. Please let us be real. I am talking about alternate learning opportunities where, like I tell you, seriously, every child in primary school needs to have an opportunity to play an instrument, to do art, to do sports.
Because
I mean, and
recreation and play is equally as important to the development.
You see, that's how you combat the frustration in the classroom. By, you know what, back in the day, this is nothing new. There were centers, woodworking opportunities for young boys and other opportunities for young. We need more of that.
I grew up in an environment where we had so many singing groups.
That's my point.
So many people. We had bands. When you went to a dance, you had bands. You didn't have a DJ.
Yeah.
We had so many people who played different instruments. We really did.
No, listen.
Now, you know, people are watching and saying you're talking about music and people are being abused. Like,
But
talk to us about why. Explain the connection.
Right.
Then we can understand why.
Right, because that affords people a psychological shift. You know, the idea of, you know, it gives you a space to escape that hurt and pain through some creative art. That's what I'm saying.
Express
So
yourself.
express yourself somehow. So that is what is necessary, along with many other things, to be honest with you, that are possible. But
So our children need outlets.
outlets, the parents.
Positive
Listen,
outlets.
to be honest with you, there was a time I traveled to, say, Merida or so. And I hear the thinking, oh, don't be out late at night. The vendors, oh, you need to shut down at 12. We are giving into the culture of crime. It's like you're blaming people for being successful. You can't sell so late, you know. Instead of saying, no, man, you are out there late, I will patrol late to ensure that your livelihood is maintained and to ensure that you're free of crime. But you're walking 7 or 8, they say, well, you shouldn't be out, you know, you cause that in yourself. That's bogus thinking. We're falling into the grip.
Like telling girls don't get raped. Prevent
You
rape.
see what I'm saying?
Don't wear
We
short
need to
skirts, you know?
rethink this. But it's, you know, to be honest with you, the stupidity that comes over, and I'm thinking, you know, let me shut this off. Because I think we have lost our keel a long time ago. If people are in the parks, recreating, you know, I went to schools where you can be midnight playing tennis. You put on the switch. These are regular, ordinary colleges. You know, if you wanted to do that, you do that. You have a right to. And there's a security. They don't tell you, oh, you know that maybe too late now, you know, or you're the burn current or so. There was a time when we had lit football fields. These lights and the ground, that's gone. We are losing our spaces to do the things that make us healthy. And then we wonder why we have an obesity problem or a health problem or all kinds of things. Well, that's probably a manifestation of unmanaged stress. We are in peril as a society. People need to be running and using just exercising and having a sense that they're safe.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the other way around. Stop doing that. You need to get your home gym, annex our belly of fence, and have 15 dogs. What is happening? We need to rethink this, and the people.
So
need
we're
to,
going defensive in our role, kind of accepting status quo.
and this defensive move is really backing up in the sense that you will lose. If our children can't go to the basketball court at 4 or 5 and 6 and play because of people are using drugs there, then we have failed. There was a time when drugs has always been around. There was a time when the drug users hid themselves under plum trees very far in the way on the outskirts. Today they want to take over the main spaces. We have allowed it. It's a collective thing that is happening, and a transformation needs to happen.
I hear from Furman very clearly. Children need positive outlets.
That's
Music, sports, exercise, that we cannot simply be focusing on cutting back on our own space and freedom and the children's space and freedom in response to crime. Jenny, what are your thoughts in being able to mitigate the situation or the prevalence of violence that we experience?
It seems to me that right now we see the response is put more boots on the ground.
Yeah.
It didn't work in Jamaica. So why are we continuing to walk that path? We need to educate our people. We need to, somebody said it earlier, we need to provide opportunities for women to go back and learn how to read and write so they can help their children. We need to make sure that women can get jobs. If they have an education, they can get a job. Hopefully they can get a job or learn how to start a little business and take care of themselves. There's lots of opportunities to do small business. You don't have to depend on a man. We really have to get away from this thing where I am dependent and I have my hand out to whomever will give me something. That's what's killing us, I believe, right? And so if I become dependent on somebody else, then they can shame me, they can do all kinds of, I'm dependent, you control me, you have power and control over me. And I really believe this is what we have to do. We have got to liberate women and empower them so that we can get out there and take care of our own. That's how I feel. I love Fermin's thing that we need to do all these things. That's important.
I think both need to be done,
yes.
yeah.
But I really think we have to
Because
empower
even
women.
in the schools,
Absolutely.
with all the talk of focusing on standardized exams, that the first thing to get cut is your music or art or even PE.
Yeah.
And
There's something to be said about left brain, right brain. You know, you have to have balance. You have to have balance.
So, but what you're speaking of, I think it goes deeper. It goes to having women understand from a very young age
Yes.
value. That I'm more than a procreator, or that I am more than a dependent.
Yes.
And that's, how do we undo that? You know, I think
I get stressed out when I think about it, because you know we do a lot of stuff where we are talking to women. Marlene, I listened to that thing last night, and people are talking about domestic violence so loosely, you know.
Yeah.
And
that was difficult to hear.
Yes, and it's so normalized. We have normalized violence, normalized it. Not just accept it, it's normal. This is what you do first. You respond with violence first.
Does this start more corporal punishment practices? Does it go beyond that?
Hurt people hurt people. It's a cycle. If I grew up when I was getting beaten, people don't say, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to make sure I don't beat somebody else. It's almost as if you fall into it because it's what you know. Okay, it's what you know. Unfortunately, we have, the battering is on both sides sometimes, but mainly we have women who have accepted that they cannot help themselves, and so depend on people who beat them or who put them in vulnerable positions, and they bring their children along with them. That has to change. I'm not saying that just putting money into a department is going to do it.
Right.
You really have to get out there and start. Instead of doing this thing like Fermin said, you know, spending more money buying, giving more scholarships or whatever, teach these women how to read, teach them how to be able to take care of themselves. Beltrade is doing a really good thing where they help women with small businesses, right?
Yeah.
We need to let people know that there's some of these opportunities out there so that they do not have to depend on these men. And earlier we were talking about just the whole culture of hurting children to get at somebody else. I think a lot of this is in this situation. I don't want to talk about just this particular situation, but there is something to be said about hurting a child so badly to get back at somebody else. That's crazy, particularly when you are using your sexual organs to subjugate and beat down
Humiliate,
and
yeah.
just in a rage hurt somebody this badly.
I think that also touches on something which we sort of touched on a little bit earlier, but talking about, you know, normalizing violence and let's say dominant behavior and something in men. And that's definitely something that I think we talk about all the time, that we need to address at a societal level, how we raise our male children, how do we socialize them so that they can, you know, deal with emotions rather than being violent. You know, so that they don't have to project this dominant personality, so that they feel that if they're in a situation, you know, that they feel that it's their right to abuse somebody, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, you know, how do we, you know, that's an issue that also, you know, needs serious addressing. And I'm wondering if in your work, from both of your perspectives, whether you see that changing positively, let's say, anytime sooner, you know, based on what you're looking at, how are we doing where that is concerned?
I unfortunately, I don't think that we're doing very, very well. Let me say this. I think there is a rethink. You know, I like to think about this. If you're hollow, when I say hollow, you're empty. If I'm not grounded on my culture, my mestizo-ness, and some of the lessons that I got that I could process, of course, I have some education, I have some school, I had some good opportunities. It offered perspective. I learned a little bit about the world. But if your world is in a nutshell, and this is all you have, then that's your reality. But I think there are opportunities in our little circles, and I think we need more. We need more men. We need to be grounded on who we are, on what is it to be a man or what is it to be a woman, and to critically look at those things. And I like how Jenny put it. Hurt brings hurt. Can we, instead of hurting, be supportive and grow together? What does it mean to be successful?
We could start right with the mothers.
You see
So
what
I
I'm
have
saying?
been saying too that there needs to be there needs to be a men's empowerment group as well. And the women
Absolutely.
don't have to do it. The men can start it on
Their
their
own,
own.
yes.
They're fully capable as well.
Yes.
It is critical that we show that men do positive things in our
Listen,
society,
let
and
me-
some do choose a path different from domestic violence and womanizing and
A lot.
alcoholism, which is kind of just the standard of what we put on men.
People could go online and look at quickly Mahatma Gandhi as a formidable man at a world stage level. He did not depict any of the qualities that this is a macho, masculine. But this is an exemplary, outstanding example of what a man is or what he can be.
Yeah.
You see, so we need to look at those other aspects, you know. And I think, for example, if you're playing a little competitive game and you lose, you learn something from that. It's a part of your development. I don't need to get a gun now and shoot you. But when you're so hollow, when you're so shallow, that's the first thing that comes. You're primal, meaning you're way to the very essence of, and in this case, a very raw essence of just hurting or killing.
Yeah.
How lower can we be? You know, where you know,
Babies-
I don't know. But I don't know.
Babies
It's
are,
a baffling one.
It is.
We have to start with the parents. We have to
Okay.
start right way down there, I believe. Where when if a baby boy goes and plays with a doll, everybody screams, ah! You put the doll down, you turn into a Lee Sissy or
Right.
whatever. But that's when boys learn how to be tender.
Nurture.
By
Yeah.
nurturing, right? We have to stop this nonsense about these are the roles for boys and these are the
Right,
roles for
I agree.
girls, and really and truly start teaching children to be loving and kind, all
That's-
children, and
Not just girls.
not just
girls,
girls
Everybody.
and boys. We need to start down there. I'm seeing some men, I hadn't seen this for a while, but I'm seeing men now with their babies,
Yeah.
being really loving and nurturing with
Yeah.
babies. I'm loving that. That's great.
I wanted to jump in there because this is one of the things we talked about it a lot, about teaching boys how to be more nurturing and kind of removing the gender stereotypes that we've placed on them for such a long time. What I hear sometimes are stories of parents who are trying at home, but then they have to go into the school environment with other children who have not had that exposure, with teachers who haven't bought into that exposure. So try as you may as a parent, you'll still have girls coming home, shifting to the gender stereotypes, or little boys coming home, shifting to that gender stereotype, despite what mommy and daddy are trying to do at home.
Right.
So it has to be a collective approach, or you'll be constantly fighting the system.
But we have to start somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I look at what Compar is doing. It's
Wonderful work.
one person at a time, one family at a time, one mother at a time, one father at a time. You know, they say one wedding field basket. That's where we have to start. That's where we are starting. We see the changes a little bit at a time, but hopefully, over time, it will make an impact. You know. Again, I just need to say this as my final thought because I see Stephanie.
Yeah, I know. The producers here.
It is so important, ladies. Please be careful when you have little ones about bringing men into your family or you moving your children into that situation. And if you are in a domestic violence situation and you have children, you need to get up for yourself, but more so for your children. More so for your children.
All right, before we close though, I do want to get in the mandatory reporting law, because that's one of the things that I think we started off in terms of talking about how and why, but people are also legally mandated to
Right.
report
Right.
child abuse,
Right.
physical and sexual.
Right. So essentially there are two groups. Those are mandated, or those that must and should. And if they don't, there can be consequences to them. And these are people that generally exercise some kind of a power and control over those children. And you talk about hospital personnel, doctors, teachers, counselors, police, people that can exercise power and control over kids. This includes family members as well. So you have a duty to report. You should report it. And then you have the rest of society that they could say, you know what, they have a moral obligation. They should do it because just it's the right thing. That's the neighbor, that's the, you know, maybe the casual passerby, you know, that's what it is. But the provisions afford some protections as well. People that have a duty to report, it's many times as a result of their job, that their professional stuff, you should do it. And I started saying that even among social workers, the literature, the research that has been done, even they hesitate sometimes to report certain, sometimes. And we talked about that very briefly. But let me summarize this by saying we all have a role, and we can play a role to protect children. We just need to take that action. There are some protections. And of course, it's great if we look beyond that moral. Moral kind of puts you off the hook. Well, you should. But if we think that protecting children is their right and my obligation, then we have a good mix. Children need to protect it, and it's our right to help them, obligation to uphold that right for them.
All right. Thank you very much for being a part of our conversation this morning. As we said, it is one of the things that pretty much everyone is talking about, with disgust, with rage, with frustration.
We're going through the grieving process. We need to understand that.
Yeah. And we hope that the conversation triggers or inspires thoughts and actions that we need to adapt from this point forward.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, We're still talking about life-saving tips, but this time it's going to be CPR. So please stay tuned.
Signing up for Smart's
And we are back, and we are shifting our discussion a little bit, still on the health topic, but we are moving from a little bit more of the emotional side to the actual physical side. And we are joined by Javier Canul, who is an emergency medical technician and the co-owner of ABC Life Support Belize. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here as always.
You look a little bit familiar. All right, Javier. I always like when you shift to your serious role. We got the clowning, Mr. Ozzy.
That's right.
And then when we talk about emergency medical services, then you know you're talking to Javier, because then things get real serious.
Actually, it complements each other in terms of when I'm teaching, there's always room for fun.
Yeah.
So I teach with a lot of fun and a lot of things going on. But when it's time to be serious, I'm serious, like they said.
Yeah. Because it is topic.
That's right.
Now, you have ABC Life Support, which is a medical, it's an EMT training, CPR training, sorry.
Actually, it specializes in, it has been created to teach the general public in what we call pre-hospital care.
Okay.
By that we mean any care that can be given to the patient outside of the hospital until the ambulance comes.
Okay.
So I link basically I teach people to be the first link in the chain to survival.
So it's like first aid training.
And it goes all the way up on, I teach cardiac rhythms,
Okay.
how to read cardiac rhythms. I teach how to assess a patient in advanced life support and the treatment you can give. Yeah,
Okay.
I do what you call pre-workshop to the actual certification course.
Okay, and so you started this business along with your sons?
Actually, interestingly, I started out along with my spouse, Andrea, and we came up with the idea and said, well, we need to do something to help people because there are a lot of people who do not understand the concept of pre-hospital care. I remember working at Burt when the ambulance would go to schools, nobody know what to do. The ambulance get there, they don't know where to go, and when we get there, the patient is right there, nobody's doing anything. So we came up with a principle and idea that says, like, we want people to know what's going on, we want to help them, we want to help them to get their protocols together, so when anybody get hurt, they will know what to do.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, well, thank goodness, I'm blessed with 4 sons.
Yeah.
Are medical officers, doctors, and they actually oversee all the protocols for ABC Life Support in terms of all the training purposes. They review all the documents to make sure before I get out there, they're overseeing and they have make sure that it's right. Yeah. I'm also assisted by one of my favorite doctors. I love Dr. Coyer as well, but he's a little out of the picture right now, and I'm assisted also by Dr. Hidalgo, who is one of my biggest advocates. He actually, if a patient needs to go to Merida, or if they need to go anywhere out of Belize, he would be contacting me so that I can take them out as an experienced medical provider.
Yeah, yeah. So what you are saying is that there's a lot that can be done between the recognition of an emergency situation and the arrival of emergency medical care.
That is right.
Okay.
And that is lacking a whole lot in Belize.
Well,
and the system itself is very weak, but I'm trying to make sure that we build with a good foundation because we don't want to be here and we lack the foundation. That's where and this is where we're at right now. We're lacking the foundation a lot.
Yeah. And so 2 things usually happens. One, you said very clearly, like people just kind of leave the person and wait for help. But then the other one is that they move them. How do you know? And that's a critical.
That's a critical point.
How do you know when I should move the person versus wait for care?
Okay, and it's a very interesting question, and it's a touchy little topic. But basically, I'd advise anybody if when to move somebody versus not to move.
Yeah.
First of all, if you're trained to move them, go ahead, and you have the right equipment. If you're not trained, and unless it's a life and death situation, then you want to move them. Yeah. Making sure. Well, basically, for me, it's best always to have somebody alive, and the loved one can see them another day alive, versus not seeing them any at all.
Okay.
If you move them and you're not trained, you can create more problems for them. They will be a paraplegic. They can be a paraplegic. You could hurt them and create more injury, or you can even kill them. Yeah. So it's best that if you don't know what to do, leave them. The only time you want to move them if it's a life or death situation. So
the main issue here is really several things, but one can be like broken bones you have inside. Moving them may cause more injuries.
That's right.
Several,
broken ribs can puncture lungs, can puncture a heart.
So you can create injuries by moving an injured person rather than just waiting for someone to guide you through what to do next.
That's right.
But I will move them if they are, let's say, in danger of traffic that's coming, or a fire that's spreading.
That's right.
Or a car that might explode.
Correct so. Correctly so.
Okay.
But then there's ways that even you know, without, let's say, you know, you don't have to be a doctor or something to do it. So that's what we're really.
Well, we need to get training, and if you and my dream has always been, and I have always advocated for this, that every single person in this country should learn basic first aid, or even CPR, and it's across the board. It's so easy that we can help each other, and most of the time these things happen in our homes, especially CPR. I've never recalled going on the street to take care of a patient who has a cardiac arrest. It's always in their homes, and normally it's in the bathroom, and that's when it happens the most. And so people who are at home needs to be able to know what to do to help their loved ones.
Okay.
I've heard so many stories where loved ones say, "Mama had this pain in my chest, I never know what to do," and as a result, they blame themselves for the rest of their lives. So we don't want that to happen. So this is why we're here today.
Okay.
To talk a little bit about.
So because
CPR.
this is clearly just television lessons, we're going with just the basics.
That's
There's
right.
a lot more in-depth information that you
That's
can
right.
offer to people, but we're doing like what you can do in the very immediate situation.
That's right.
Without harming and hopefully helping.
That's right.
Yeah.
So today we want to talk about CPR, and it's the basic skill for anybody.
Okay.
And American Heart in 2000, what year are we in? Oh,
2020.
2012, they're about embarked on a program called Hands Only CPR.
Yeah.
And that Hands Only CPR is because if we see a dirty, old-looking guy on the street, and we want to say we're working class, but we don't want to put our mouths on anybody.
Yeah.
We say, well, we can at least start chest compressions.
Chest compression.
And American Heart Association also say, and I quote American Heart because I was an American Heart instructor and I have it down in my hand until they will be changing sometime in 2020 this year. What they're saying is that when somebody collapses, there is always oxygen within the body for about 2 to 4 minutes.
Okay.
So you have 2 to 4 minutes to start chest compression.
Okay.
But across the line, you must always make sure that there is scene safety, meaning that you come first.
Yeah.
If the scene is not safe, you don't go.
Yeah.
It has to be safe. If not, you will become a second casualty, which will create more problems.
Okay.
So after that, let's rule that aside that we've checked scene safety.
All right. Nothing
So
is coming.
nothing is coming. Nothing is. We're here.
Me. Yeah.
So the first, if you're by yourself, what is one of the things that we always have on us all the time?
Cell phone.
A cellular phone. Oh, sorry. A cellular phone. I'm sorry. The Aussie is trying to come out. Stay where you are, buddy. And most of the time, when we have a cellular phone, we can dial the emergency number.
Okay.
Now, in Belize, we say dial 911. Guys, I want to encourage you. If you know the number for the ambulance, call it. It is 223-3292. They will be the second link to the chain to survival.
Yeah.
223-3292 is the number of the ambulance. You need to get them.
Save it under your phone. Save it under a favorite contact so you don't have to look it up.
Anywhere, even if you can't.
Stick it on your refrigerator, put it on your phone, automatic dial, whatever
Just
it may
very
be.
quickly, why do you give that advice?
Well,
911 is still an option, but it's better if you call the ambulance direct.
Well, there is still some problems with 911 that needs to be worked out and ironed out perfectly. Right now, it's not working 100%. Forgive me if I'm touching anybody's toes, but it's the truth. But if you dial 223-3290, you get direct access to the ambulance service.
Okay.
And the guys there are trained to be able to take care of these kind of incidents. They come with all the equipment.
Talk you through.
They can help you.
Yeah.
2 things when you dial that thing. You want to say where you are and what's going on.
Okay.
Because if you don't tell them where they are, where you are, you can't find you. Not say, are they by one lane? You have to give a reference point.
Okay.
Okay? You could say, I'm by where the old Napa building was. That's where I'm at. That's where I live.
Across from Mercy Clinic.
Yeah, across from Mercy Clinic. You need to give a reference so these people can know exactly in which area they're going to go. The second thing is you need to say what's going on. Because if you say what's going on, the guys will automatically know what's going on and they'll come prepared to take care of that.
Yeah.
The dispatcher on the other end, hopefully, will guide you through a process as to what you can do.
Okay.
All right? But if the dispatcher doesn't guide you through, what you want to do is immediately we say, you don't, in safety, you don't call for help. Now you need to take the hard part of your hand.
So this is for an unconscious person.
Unconscious person. I will get to a little technique right now.
Good.
So this is for an unconscious person. But let me hold up a little bit because you're right. There are 2 emergencies for cardiac arrest. One is a cardiac arrest, which means that your heart is not pumping. And there is heart attack, which means that your heart is still beating, but the blood is not flowing directly. There's a valve cut off or something. Some people say, my past survived one cardiac arrest. No. He survived a heart attack. All right, the heart attack is where they end up taking you to with Bay Clinic and they put a stent in you, or they use fibrinolytic therapy, medications to break up the clot, whatever. So there's a difference. Heart attack is when your heart has a blockage in one of the coronary arteries and you need to get to the cardiology center or one of these that we have to get that fixed. Or a heart attack, cardiac arrest is when the heart is not pumping anymore, so it's not pushing blood to the brain or any part of the body.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to settle on that. When you're having a cardiac arrest, it means that you're unconscious. So we're talking about cardiac arrest.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to take if they're conscious now, how would you know that the person is having it?
Well, I was going to say,
Because most people, and even people in the medical field have this problem. They don't know how to recognize that.
Yeah.
When we breathe in and out. But when somebody is suffering from a cardiac arrest, an adult I'm talking about, they'll be breathing in, or they go like fish without out of water, they go, but they're not exhaling and inhaling again. So that is the biggest sign you want to look for. It's called gasping breath, gasping. Okay? If you recognize that, then you want to take the hard part of your hand immediately, and you want to put it in the center of the chest. Now, American Heart would say on the lower half of the breastbone, but it's difficult to actually, in times of stress, you don't have time to think. This is just basic, just for the simple person.
Yeah.
And I like to say, titi, chest, titi. Because everybody knows where a titi is. Everybody knows where the chest is.
And all of a sudden now my cameramen are paying attention, right? Good morning to you too there.
All right, so if you say titi, chest, and I got this from a very good doctor friend of mine, and he's right on target. Anyway,
But
when I remember his
it's the
name.
language that we use.
That's
People
right.
understand it more.
Okay, so
you're going for that space in between the breasts.
the breast, that's right. So, and that's why we say titi, chest titi, not titi, navel titi. It's titi, chest titi. So you know exactly where to put your hand. The hard part of your hand, and that goes right in here. And the whichever hand makes you comfortable, that's the one you want to use. For me, it's always my left, then my right. Okay?
So you want the stronger hand?
Well, normally it's the hand that makes you the most comfortable, or whichever you choose. For me, like I say, it's not my strongest hand is my right hand.
Oh, you're right.
But my left hand.
This extension feels
That's
better
right,
with
that's
my
right.
left than it does with my right.
And I don't know why, but that's how it works.
It's maybe.
I want to encourage you as well. Always lock your fingers. Lock your fingers, because people do this, and when you do this, you end up rubbing your hand and peeling your hand, and hand slip off, and people do this. All right? But if you do this, it's locked. All right? Now, at this point, this is where I need to go down to the other mannequin there. Can we
Yes,
go
sure.
there?
Let's go.
Okay.
We're all mobile.
Now here we have some nice pads and everything, but in the real world, there's no pads.
You're gonna dig up your knees.
You got to get your knees bruised. I can show my knees some scars, right? But we leave that alone. So you get down. Always make sure that the person nipple line runs directly in the center of your body. You put the hard part of your hand, this part, please, this part. Titi, chest, titi, right here. You go over, and you want to be square over that patient. You don't want to be like this. If you're like this, you'll be pushing off the heart. If you're like this, you will be directly on top of the heart. And hands locked, and you go down directly, and you push down 2 inches in depth. How fast do we go? We go at a rate of 30 compressions within 18 seconds. Or people say 100 to 120 compressions within a minute.
Okay.
Or people say again,
So do you
can do it to the
count
rhythm
out
of
loud?
staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive, okay? Now, I encourage anybody who is doing CPR to always count and count loud. Why? If you call for help and that person comes in and hear you counting, they will know where you are and what they can do to help you.
Okay.
But if you're there and you're pushing down and they don't hear nothing, they don't know what to do.
Okay.
So if I'm here pushing down like 28, 29, 30, and they come in 30, they automatically come and probably take over, start to do compression, and then the other person go to give
Why
breath.
is that number combination important?
Could you repeat the question?
Why the number, the number, specific number 30? Why is it that?
Okay, if it's one person, especially an adult and a teenager. All right, so this is hands-only CPR is only for adults and teenagers. It's not for babies.
Okay.
Because they suffer from a different complexity, different thing which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
So if it's an adult, you need to give across the board is 30 compression and 2 breaths, because 30 compression is actually what helps to give enough oxygen to the brain. And you have 10 seconds in which to give 2 breaths and get back to the chest. So that 10 seconds is very important as well, because that oxygen is being within the system
Yeah.
within 10 seconds feeding the brain. So getting back to the chest in time is very important. So you can't say 28, 29, 30, whoo, I'm tired, whoo.
No, you have to start counting
You
10
need to go
immediately.
to that, give breaths immediately.
Yeah.
All
But you
right?
said
But
it's
remember, with
hands
hands-only CPR, and you're right. With hands-only CPR, we won't give breaths. So we just go up to a rate of 100 to 120 compressions per minute.
So after you hit that 30, you pause.
No.
Oh,
just
you
go
just go
to a rate of
continuously.
100 to
Just keep
120
that rate, yeah.
compressions per minute. And now, after you've done that, by that time, hopefully, will be coming. You have already called the ambulance. They will come, and the person who will come along will probably come with a bag, mask, and everything they need, along with the AED to revive the patient. One point I need to make clear is that doing CPR will not save a patient.
Yeah.
This is just
Doing CPR is prolonging that life
exactly.
until help comes along, and electric shock can be given and medication so that these patients can have a chance. But if you don't do it, the patient doesn't have a chance to survive. So just so that everybody knows that you're not doing CPR to fix if they suffer from asthma or anything else, but you're doing it to prolong life with their heart, to keep it going.
Okay. So if I am pumping the chest and somewhere in that 120, it seems like they're breathing, should I stop?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's difficult for an adult when you're doing CPR and they start to breathe. No, that's a no-no. They won't breathe.
Okay.
Because an adult will suffer from a cardiac problem.
Okay.
The chances of that person recovering or start to breathe, something like in the movies, is a no-no.
No, that doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen.
Okay, good. See, 'cause
They
that's
need
what
the
we
electric
see in the
shock
movies.
and they need drugs. But for a child, they have a better chance because they don't suffer from a cardiac problems. They suffer from respiratory problems.
Yeah.
So then at that point, the child can survive.
Yeah.
Many times we've seen children in a pool. We take them out of the water, we start CPR and see them start to, and start to breathe. And that's a yes.
Okay.
All right, that's a yes, but not with an adult.
Okay.
Okay, but even if they start to breathe, you need to make sure that they get to the
If
hospital.
this was a drowning teen or adult, we do the same compression?
We do the same thing. Nothing changes.
Okay.
Nothing. So in the past, in the past, they used to say, roll them over, try to get out the water. No, if they're drowning, jump on the chest, just do CPR. Just do hands-only CPR. What you're doing is pushing water out of the stomach at the same time working on the heart.
Okay.
But if you take and roll them and try to
You're
push
trying
the
to keep
stomach to
blood
push out the water,
pumping
then you're
out
not doing
in the
anything.
body, right?
That's right.
Okay. So that you can stay alive.
That's right. And real quick, let's talk about choking, because I promised I was going to do that too.
Okay.
If somebody is choking, how would we know that the normal sign for choking is normally we'd see them looking pale around the mouth, or they'll be holding their throat and swelling their eyes big. If I say, are you choking? And you say, yeah, the choke. I don't need to help you because you can still breathe. You're still passing air. So I'll encourage you, keep coughing. But if I say, are you choking? And you go, then I need to take action. At that point, I need to get behind you, find your
Navel.
navel,
Yeah.
find your navel, take 2 fingers, put it on top of the navel, make a fist like this, bring it over, now you're around the patient. So find the navel, this, then you bring this one on top, and what you want to do is go in and up,
In and up.
in and up, in and up. You will do that until the patient becomes unconscious, or it brings up the object and they start to breathe again. If they become unconscious, you need to get them on the ground as quick
And
as
do the
possible and
compression.
start
Do the
CPR.
Compressions.
So here's the thing. There is official CPR training that you can do. And
Yes.
you can learn how to do these techniques in its entirety. That entails a lot more than what we're saying right now. I want to be clear.
That's
this
right.
is not the, but this is simply what you can do if someone is in cardiac arrest and you are around to assist. No other trained person is around. The help hasn't arrived as yet. This is how you keep their life going in the meantime.
But,
Am I
and you're
accurate?
perfectly correct. American Heart endorses hands-only CPR
Yeah.
because anybody can do it
All right.
until the real help comes, and they will
Okay.
take it in another angle or a different level.
Yeah.
But if you don't start the basics, nothing will work.
You are lessening the chances of surviving.
That's right.
One thing we didn't say, can you do it on a bed?
Yes, American Heart, and okay, let me make this crystal clear.
Yeah.
It is not okay, but it's best to start even if you're there
So don't
until
go-
you can do otherwise.
So what I hear from you is urgency.
That's right, that's
it's
right.
a matter of not trying to think if
If you don't have one, you can. If you don't have, okay. What we would recommend is you get a hard piece of board and put it under them. But what if you don't have it? What do you do?
Yeah.
Okay. What if
Then
the
just
ground is
start.
if the ground is full of mud, there's ants and everything on the ground? How are you going to do it?
Just do it.
So just do it until you can do otherwise.
Okay.
It's not the best option, but here the word is until you can do otherwise as quick as possible. But start. Urgency is what counts.
All right.
Yep.
So we're gonna try it.
Well.
You're gonna show us the baby one.
Okay. Let's
Okay,
do
let me do the adult first, right? Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we've decided that we'll do the shifter roles because naturally they want me to do the baby, but I'll do the adult, and then Gavin is gonna show how to do the baby.
Okay.
Right?
Go ahead.
Okay. So we're gonna go down on our knees.
Make sure the nipple line is running directly in the center of your body.
Okay.
Make sure your legs is about 6 inches abreast. And then go ahead and put your hard, whichever hand makes you better. If you have on a watch or anything like that, it's best to take it off.
Okay.
Because then you don't want to be, I broke my watch, so I now push down hard. It's best to do it the right way.
Take
Let me help
anything
you.
off that is distracting.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Good.
Okay, and then you want to lean over and get as close as possible to the patient.
All right.
So let's bring this mannequin a little bit closer
So
to
we
you.
bring
That's
them?
right.
Because I'm short.
And straight down, and make sure your arms, and you want to go straight down without without shaking your head all over the place.
Yeah.
All right, it's straight down. And you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and you go at a rate up you go to 100 to 120 times per minute.
Per minute, yeah.
Yeah.
So this would be slow.
No, that's perfect. That's okay. Remember that if you go too fast, good job, Marlene.
Okay.
You did.
Remember
was good.
that if you do this, if you're pushing down and this is what you're doing, it's too slow for blood and the blood to go to the brain, which carries oxygen and sugar.
Okay.
And so it will go slow. But if you go too fast, you're doing this. You're not giving the heart chambers to open to get full blood for it to squeeze out to push it around again.
Okay.
So if you go at that rate, 1, 2, like you were going, that's perfect because the heart is opening, blood is rushing in and it's squeezing it out all over and it goes continuous flow. So you're doing an excellent rate.
Okay.
Gavin, if you'd like to try, go ahead.
Well, we gotta do the
Don't
baby.
be shy.
We want to learn baby. So you're gonna talk him to baby.
Okay.
Because this is every parent's worst nightmare, and I'm sure that helplessness would.
Okay, for a baby, some of the things for a baby is normally, like I mentioned, a baby does not suffer from cardiac problems.
Usually respiratory.
There's normally respiratory problems. So what are the signs that you would see? You'll see around their mouth, first of all, starts to look blue. If you do not hear the baby crying, that means there's something going on.
So you
All
see
right.
the signs of distress, but you're not hearing.
That's right. All right. And what you want to do then is you want to come and they say, people will say tickle the baby. I'm not a fan of that. I'm into slapping the baby under the foot bottom. When you hit them there, they don't like it, so they start to cry. If they don't cry, and you look at them and you open the airway and they're not breathing, then you need to start chest compressions. We do chest compression with 2 fingers. Again, it's the same thing. Nipple line, chest, nipple line. 2 fingers goes in the center of the chest and you want to go down.
Okay.
All right? You do not do hands-only CPR for babies.
Yeah.
You need to do the entire process.
Okay, what's the age that you're saying?
Yeah,
Up to
exactly.
what age?
Okay, American Heart has a guideline that says adult is, okay, let me go over. 0 to 1 year is a baby.
Okay.
Puberty to 1 year old is considered a child.
Okay.
And anything after puberty
Is adult.
is considered an adult. So treat them as an adult.
So the 2 fingers is for baby.
Babies.
What do you do for child?
For child, 1 hand.
1 hand.
Yeah, for child, 1 hand. Sorry, I don't mean to put my hand on the baby, yeah.
Like that.
But a child and an adult, same type of CPR.
Okay.
Except that you will use 1 hand, unless the baby bigger than you, Gavin, or the child is bigger than you, obese, then you want to use 2 hands. Or you get tired with 1 hand, then you use both hands.
Okay.
Okay, good point, Marlene.
baby.
So now for the baby, you want to use your 2 fingers. Let's go. So here we are. Hey, are you okay? Help! And then you want to check for a pulse. Where would you check for a pulse for a baby? This is a little more complex than the adult, right? So you want to check, there's a pulse from here to your armpit, and it's called the brachial pulse, right about here. On yourself, on an adult, we won't find it because we develop muscles. But on a baby, it will always be here. So it's right about here. You check for a pulse, and you check for about 10 seconds. So it's
2
1,
fingers, yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5. Very important point. Don't do this. Don't check for a pulse with with two
Pressing.
Don't squeeze.
Don't use your thumbs. I always tell people on my Facebook page, I say ABC Life Support is my Facebook page. ABC Life Support BZ. These are the two fingers you use to check for anybody's pulse. Don't ever put your thumb in combination with them because there's a pulse in your thumb. Okay, so you want to touch this and you choke for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we are actually talking about literally seconds. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, it's literal seconds. If there's no pulse, at that point, we're hoping somebody will come in. You tell them, hey, Calbert, tell them bring the machine for the baby. And then they want to know what to do. And what you at that time is prolong life until they come.
Okay.
If, remember, you can be doing CPR and the baby might recover.
Yeah.
Because they don't suffer from cardiac problems.
Yeah.
So when you do a compression, you give 2 breaths.
2 breaths, okay.
And once the chest, how do you know you're giving enough? But you just want to see the chest go up. Even if it goes up just a little bit, that's enough.
Okay.
You don't want to burst. Because that too much, you'll burst the baby. You can damage the baby. And if you have anything in his stomach, it might go into the baby lungs and create aspiration, and then create problems for you. So be gentle with that.
This one isn't hands only.
No, this includes baby. For babies, it's always you have to give breaths.
Okay.
Okay? After you give your 2 breaths, you get back and you start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 28, 29, 30, and you process continue back and forth.
30,
and it is still 30 compression and 2 breaths.
Okay.
If you come to help him, then it becomes 15 compressions and 2 breaths. The reason for that is why. Let me see if you can figure it out.
Because I will be less tired than he is and breathe
No,
harder.
but Gavin knows, but he's not thinking. Why? It's because the baby does not suffer from.
The cardiac.
So the quicker you give them breaths, the better for them. The quickness of giving breaths is better for them. That's why you go to 30 and 2. At that point, you'll be doing this. 2 fingers below the nipple line, just on the nipple line, between the 2 fingers, between the nipple line, just on the nipple line, sorry. And you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 13, 14, 15, and then Marlene will give breaths. 1, 2, and then Gavin goes again. 1, and that process continue until help comes in.
More than one person, you help
Switch
each
to
other
15 to 2, yeah. It's always
to enable
important.
more breath.
Because you want to get the breath in as much as possible.
That's right. It's important that whenever you have 2-person help working, it's always best.
All right.
Let's see your
So you don't have to give breaths, Gavin, but you can.
So, but the first thing is I would check.
That's right.
There.
All right, so
And you need to be aggressive with like, hey, what's up?
So really.
Yeah,
Down there.
yeah.
Then you want to check the pulse. Check if
You
there's a
shout
pulse.
for help immediately. Help! Help!
And
then
then
check
you
for a
check
pulse
for a pulse using these 2 fingers.
for about 5 to 10 seconds.
Then
Good.
you start right in the chest, in
In
the middle,
between the nipples.
in between the nipples, and then you start your compressions with your.
Okay, so you want to be that same
Directly-
process, directly over and keep your 2 fingers and you go straight up and down.
Right in front
That's
of you,
right.
laying down flat, and you want to start 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
and
8.
then 29,
30,
and then
you
you
give
take
2
your 2
breaths.
breaths, and then you start over.
That's right, and the
Alright.
process continues.
Keep-
Oh, I saw
Until-
you doing the 2 thumb one.
That's-
Is that easier?
I think that's it.
No, the 2 thumb is only if somebody come to help you.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Exclusively.
Okay.
All right?
And in that case, I would be in front of the baby like this.
That's right. And then Marlene
And then I would
would be at the
give
head.
breath.
Every 15.
Okay.
Okay? I know this is not easy, but it's
Life saving.
no. I know that this is not easy, but it's something you want to think about. People are saying, but you need to pinch the baby nose. Well, listen to me. Your mouth bigger than
Big
the baby
enough to
nose
cover
and the mouth.
both.
Yeah.
So you want to put your mouth over both the nose and the mouth. For an adult, you can pinch the nose. But for a baby, no,
Yeah,
no,
but
it's
we
a
didn't
no-go.
teach breath techniques.
No, but techniques, that's because a different class. That's a
Yeah.
different class altogether. Choking for the baby, real quick, because again, I've seen babies choking and I've always been wrong. I'm like, either bad luck or good luck where I have to help people.
The parents are lucky.
Babies choke off water, they choke off food, they choke off breast milk, they choke everything. If a baby is choking, what do you want to do? Well, basically, you want to establish that they're choking. You look at them, mom will say, hey, my baby is not breathing, or my baby's choking. Take the baby, put your hands like this on the baby's face. Get the baby's legs apart and get the baby right here. And keep the head down because you want gravity to take place.
Yeah.
And you will hit this baby 5 times going down like that. Not straight down, but like that, because you want to force the air going that way. So it's 1, 2, between the shoulder blades, not in the lower back. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You stretch your hand over, get the baby over in the quickest possible. Same thing again, and you do chest compression. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you rotate again, and the process continues until the baby becomes, until the baby bring up the object, or until the baby starts to cry.
Okay.
If the baby does not cry, what do you do? CPR.
Start over. Yeah.
Start CPR. Help!
That's a loud help.
All right?
And breath.
And breaths, and you back and
With
forth.
the baby, you want to give breath.
That's right, all the time.
Okay.
Okay?
I think it's a scenario no one wants to think of. And that's, you know, I'm watching you manipulate a fake baby, and I'm thinking what it must be like if it's a real baby.
Well,
That's going to be
one
the
of
most scariest
And
thing.
you have a very good point on that, because one of the things I always encourage people, if you start to panic, then everything goes haywire. So you need to be calm. But how do we remain calm? And I point back to training. Get some training. Even if you know just the basics, that is what counts, because that is what will help you. But if you're not trained in any aspect at all, then you'll have a difficult time.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. Well, Javier, thank you once again. ABC Life Support Belize is on Facebook.
That's right.
People can get in touch there. I know you share tips, and also you can contact him about doing some of the trainings that he offers as well.
That's right.
Gavin, you can prolong the life of a baby now after this conversation. But it's absolutely, like I said, we don't want to be caught in a situation, but at least if it does happen, we know what to do.
Can I just say one thing quick?
Sure.
ABC Life Support is looking for sponsors because we want to train anybody. We want to train the police, we want to train the scouts, we want to train anybody. So if any sponsor is out there who think that they can donate something for us to train a group of people, it doesn't matter who they are. We're looking for sponsors. Reach me at 615-5757.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, too. We're going to go ahead and take our final break. When we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.
With over 100
And we're back. And what an interesting show.
Yeah, definitely. We had really productive conversations on both sides. I mean, of course, the first topic that we were discussing, of course, has been in the forefront of everyone's mind with the recent news And, you know, we want to thank, of course, Fermin and Jenny for coming and, you know, giving their perspective on, you know, all these multifaceted issues when it comes to domestic and child abuse, what we could do if you are observing a situation like that, and then also reflecting sort of on what everybody's role is in the community when we are, you know, faced with an unfortunate or, you know, sometimes an emergency situation where people's lives are literally at risk due to abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and so we want to thank them for coming in to just help us to go through what's happening in society, and also important remembering our own individual roles. We may feel helpless now in being able to undo what we've seen of recent, but it doesn't mean that we can't also make changes in what we report, how we pay attention, who we help, why we help them, and recognizing that we can play a part as well. And speaking of playing the situation no one wants to think of, the loved one unconscious in front of them, in cardiac arrest, your baby not able to breathe, what do you do? We're so grateful to have you for coming in and sharing these tips.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, we hope you paid attention because, you know, these are, of course, you know, desperate emergency situations, and you always want to make sure that you're as best equipped as possible to assist in dangerous situations. And of course, you know, there's always a little window of time before the emergency professionals do, so you want to make sure that you can do whatever you can, whether even if it's just the basics, just to help prolong life. Make sure that, you know, when the professionals do come do take over, then you have the best, you know, there's the best case scenario. And of course, we also want to remind everyone to, you know, make sure that you're keeping your emergency precautions, make sure you have those numbers handy, you know, the emergency services, whether it's ambulance or, you know, whatever, make sure you have the phone numbers accessible. If you don't know them, make sure that you try to access whatever sort of training you can, even if it's very basic, as we said, just so that you can be prepared. Always be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you want to contact us, send an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Drop me a line at marlene_oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ.
And on Instagram at OIE Belize.
And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
And start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, please.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.